Part 42. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Faye. Chapter 419. Chapter 412. It's not that I don't want to, it's that I dare not. Li Ju decisively changed the topic and asked, "How is Li's side lately?" Shan Mingzi was a little stunned by her forceful way of changing the topic, but after a moment, he thought about it and said, "It went very well. Li Hong trusts me." Hearing this, Li Ju raised his eyebrows. "Have you already met? I thought he would test you. This is progressing quite quickly." She thought that with Li Hong's suspicious character, it would take some time for him to be noticed after arriving at Li's, but she didn't expect it to be so soon. Shan Mingzi nodded and was silent for a moment, with a hint of sarcasm on his face. He has been forced to seek medical attention in a hurry now, so how can he care about that? I thought that after joining the Li family, it would take a lot of effort to gain Li Hong's trust, but my worries were all in vain. Li Hong was completely hungry at this time, and he would not let go of anyone who had a little hope of saving the Li family. "Well, it seems that Ji Huai did a good job in putting pressure on Li Ju commented. "Not only is it good, Li Hong heard that I was recruited from MZ with a lot of money, and he also knew some of MZ's secrets. He wanted to praise me to the sky, with that face, tisk tisk." Shan Mingzi now feels extremely sick when she thinks about Li Hong's usual attitude towards him. When she thinks about him as his biological father, she feels even more nauseated. Associating with this kind of person is simply bad luck for 8 lifetimes. He wanted to get MZ's internal information from me to fight back. Shan Mingzi looked sarcastic and sneered, "Don't even think about it. With Li's current strength, wouldn't you be seeking death if you fight MZ? The Li family is in chaos, and the directors are also divided. On the surface, they are racking their brains to save it, but secretly they have begun to prepare to sell their stocks and run away with the money. Even so, Li Hong still used all the funds to compete with MZ for the Dongcheng project. This was probably because he was afraid that Li's bankruptcy would be too slow." Li Ju's lips curled up slightly. "You've already said that he has been cornered, so why not give it a try? Maybe there will be a turn for the better. Change. The person in charge of the project in Dongcheng is a college classmate of Li Hong," Li Ju said. Shan Mingzi understood. No wonder he dared to take such a big risk. "I think the relationship has been established a long time ago. Sister, if he succeeds this time, will it have any impact on our plan?" Shan Mingzi frowned, a little worried. Li Ju chuckled casually, "It's just a matter of survival, let alone." She paused, spoke in a long tone, and said, "SR will also participate in the competition for Dongcheng's project this time. What do you think is Li's chance of winning against MZ and SR at the same time?" Shan Mingzi was silent. Today's imperial capital business circle is almost monopolized by the two giants SR and MZ. It can be said that there is almost no one who can rival him in the business world. Li Hong wants to win the project with his classmates' friendship, but the chance of winning is close to zero. Thinking about this, Shan Mingzi felt relieved, but soon he frowned again. When mentioning SR, he immediately thought of another thing. "Sister, will the third master get involved? MZ's recent blatant actions against the Li family, almost the entire imperial capital knows that they are hostile. If SR is also involved at this time, the outcome is really hard to say." No, Li Ju's tone was very certain. Shan Mingzi asked, "Why?" "I heard that ever since MZ established a foothold in imperial capital, it has had overt or covert conflicts of interest with SR, and they almost fell out several times. If the third master takes advantage of this time to help Li, then wouldn't our plan be completely messed up? With Qi Jinkai's methods, even if Li is unable to recover, he can still come back to life. This is the scary thing about him. Li Ju, because he is your brother-in-law." Shan Mingzi. Shan Mingzi choked suddenly and didn't know what to say for a moment. Even so, the third master doesn't know that you are the boss behind MZ, so there is no guarantee that he won't take action against MZ. Li Ju frowned and corrected the title in his words, call me brother-in-law. Is now the time to say this? Wrong. Shan Mingzi suddenly opened his eyes wide and asked in surprise, aren't you and your third, brother-in-law just pretending? He also knew about the cooperation between Li Ju and Qi Jingkai before, so he was so embarrassed when Shan's mother asked him to call someone downstairs just now. But now looking at Li Ju's tone, it seems like they are serious. Li Ju, it used to be, but it's not now. Shan Mingzi was completely stunned. He jumped up instantly and shouted in disbelief, so, sister, you were abducted like this? Li Ju's ears hurt from his surprise. She glanced at him coldly, frowned and said, what's all the fuss about? Sit down. Shan Mingzi was frightened by her eyes. No matter how angry she was, she suppressed her anger and didn't dare to show it at all. He sat back sullenly, his expression particularly depressed. The sad feeling of having a good cabbage suddenly eaten by a pig is really unpleasant. Although your brother-in-law doesn't know that MZ is mine, he won't get involved, Li Ju said. Why? Shan Mingzi said in a dull voice. Li Ju sighed, why is this melon boy so stupid? Because I hate Li Hong, do you understand? Understood. Well, to put it bluntly, it's because Li Hong doesn't want to see Li Ju, so even if there are great benefits, Qi Jingkai will not take care of the Li family. The love has been shown to this extent, and it can be called a natural show. Of course, there is another reason, Li Ju then added, although MZ and SR have some conflicts, generally speaking, the two sides have no intention of deliberately being hostile. Therefore, SR does not have to stand on the opposite side of MZ. After all, there are many, an enemy is worse than maintaining the status quo. When she said this, Shan Mingzi completely understood that SR would not express its stance on the competition between Li Shi and MZ, and the company that had always been headed by SR would naturally not participate. In this way, only a small number of people could assist Li Shi. And that small group, because they were afraid of MZ, did not dare to step forward at all, which resulted in Li's current situation of isolation and helplessness. Since this happened, even Shan Mingzi had to feel desperate for Li Hong. He tsked a few times to express his regret for Li. It's really strange, back then, Mr. Li founded the Li family and it was very successful. Now that Li Hong is here, he has ended up in this situation. Is it possible that his genes have deteriorated? Shan Mingzi paused for a moment, then shook his head violently. No, if we talk about genetic degeneration, then wouldn't it mean that he is even more useless if he is related to Li Hong by blood? Looks like I need to find another word for this curse. By the way, he suddenly thought of something, why doesn't Li Hong ask Mr. Li for help? With Mr. Li's methods, if he really takes action, the Li family will definitely have a chance of survival. Li Ju snorted a few times, a hint of ridicule flashing across his eyes. It's not that he doesn't want to, it's that he doesn't dare. As I said yesterday, 10 monthly passes will add one chapter, and there will be another chapter later. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfe. Chapter 420. Chapter 413. Are you jealous? Additional updates with monthly pass. Don't dare. Shan Mingzi was confused again. Li Ju, today is different from the past. Li Hong has a clear mind. If he asks Grandpa for help, Grandpa will definitely take back the Li family on the grounds of poor governance. Now that the uncle has come back, once the Li family is taken back, it is very likely that it will be handed over to the uncle by Grandpa, but it will never be returned to Li Hong's hands. With Li Hong's temperament, he will never watch the Li family being taken away. Even in the current situation, he would rather the Li family really go bankrupt than give it away. Li Hong is telling Mr. Li with practical actions that even if he can't get it, Li Chen can't even think of it. Shan Mingzi trembled all over. I didn't expect that the hatred between Li Hong and the uncle of the Li family was so deep. Sure enough, a wealthy family has no family ties, and an aristocratic family has no flesh and blood. Fortunately, he was just an illegitimate child, or an illegitimate child whose existence was unknown to anyone, otherwise he would definitely have to experience such disgusting things. But Shan Mingzi wondered, will Mr. Li really stand by and watch? The Li family is also the property of the Li family after all. It is impossible to watch Li Hong destroy it like this. Li Ju raised a playful smile at the corner of his mouth. How could it be? I guess Grandpa and the others must be watching Li more closely than us now. She guessed right. Although Mr. Li was indifferent to Li's situation on the surface, he clearly knew it in his heart. Ginger is still spicy when it's old. Shan Mingzi sighed with emotion. Li Ju chuckled, right? In this situation, the biggest winner may be MZ, but the biggest loser is definitely Li Hong, there is no doubt about it. It's a pity that he still can't see through it. He stubbornly thinks that as long as he holds on to the Li family can only be his. That's really stupid. How could the Li family represent the entire Li family? How could it be possible that the top wealthy families in the empire were only involved in the business world? It's a pity that his vision and structure are far from being able to see this. In short, you don't need to think about anything else now, just follow the plan, Li Ju said. All favorable factors are on their side, and it can be said that the time is right, the place is right, and the people are right. Shan Mingzi nodded, okay, I understand. With all worries dispelled, he becomes more fearless in doing things. Thinking of this, Shan Mingzi felt a lot happy. The two of them talked in the room for a while, until Qi Jinkai finally couldn't bear it anymore and came up. He knocked on the door. After the door opened, he leaned on the door frame and looked at Li Ju leisurely. His meaning was unclear. Auntie asked you to go down to eat? Shan Mingzi raised her wrist and looked at the time, and then realized that it was already dinner time without her realizing it. He looked up at Qi Jinkai, then turned to look at Li Ju. He felt that the atmosphere between the two people was a bit strange, so he said, I'll go down first, and immediately ran away. In the blink of an eye, there was no trace of him. Li Ju's eyes twitched. This coward. After Renren left, Qi Jinkai came directly to Li Ju, leaned over slightly, put his hands on the back of her chair, and held her whole body in his arms. The distance was so close that her chin almost touched her. His forehead. Li Ju tilted his head slightly and distanced himself. Have you had a great time chatting? Qi Jinkai looked at her with deep eyes, as if he was hiding his emotions. I've been waiting down there for so long, but I don't know what you two have to say. This tone had a strong smell of vinegar. Not to mention being so close to her, she could still smell the sour smell even 10 meters away. Li Ju raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile, are you jealous? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 421. Chapter 414. Who is not a boss anymore? Qi Sanyi felt that there was nothing to be ashamed of in being jealous, even though he was Li Ju's younger brother, so he admitted openly, yes, I am jealous. Qi Jinkai came closer and narrowed his eyes slightly, so, how are you going to coax me? Li Ju couldn't help but chuckle, and stretched out her hand to push his face away. Don't coax, just get away. After saying that, she stood up and left. Just as she was about to open the door, a long, slender hand stretched out from behind to hold the door tightly. At the same time, a familiar and deep voice sounded in her ears, don't even think about going out without coaxing you. Qi Jinkai's tall figure approached Li Ju, using his height advantage to trap her in his arms. The scene was a bit ambiguous, but Li Ju remained unmoved. His expression did not change at all. He turned around calmly, crossed his hands across his chest, and raised his eyes leisurely. "Oh? I want to see why you don't let me go out." The two looked at each other, neither of them convinced of the other's aura. "Do you really think she would be scared if the boss suddenly became domineering? Who is not a domineering president anymore?" Li Ju rolled her eyes hard in her heart. Finally, Chi Jinkai couldn't hold on anymore, and his attitude immediately softened, and he complained in an aggrieved tone, "You left me alone downstairs, and you don't want me to be jealous." Hearing this, Li Ju raised a smile on her lips, stretched out her finger to touch his chin, and said, "I'm giving you a chance to please Aunt Shan, so don't be ungrateful." "I don't care, you just abandoned me on purpose." "Yes, so what?" Just when Chi Jinkai was about to explode, a smile flashed across Li Ju's eyes, and she stepped forward, grabbed his collar, and kissed him on the lips. "Is this okay?" she asked. The anger that Chi Jinkai had been holding in his heart since just now disappeared immediately, and the corners of his mouth turned up involuntarily. He was very annoyed by her behavior. After coaxing a jealous person, the two of them slowly came downstairs. Shan Mingzi was helping Shan's mother put the plates. Seeing this, he glanced up at them and complained, "The people on the next floor are like this Moji, if you don't know, you'd think you're doing something inappropriate for children." These words were heard clearly by Li Ju and Chi Jinkai, who had just walked up to him. "Chi Jinkai! Li Ju!" Li Ju kicked him unceremoniously. "Shan Mingzi, we were only a few minutes late. Do you think your brother-in-law only had a few minutes? Who are you looking down on?" "Chi Jinkai." Shan Mingzi rubbed her calf and admitted her mistake with a grin on her face. "I was wrong, sister. I shouldn't look down on my brother-in-law." After saying that, he turned to look at Chi Jinkai and apologized again sincerely, "I'm sorry, brother-in-law, I shouldn't doubt you." "Chi Jinkai. I didn't realize it just now, but why did he have the urge to beat this kid to death?" He hesitated in his heart for a long time, and finally just clenched his fists and smiled slowly at him. He looked Shan Mingzi up and down, his eyes flickering with unclear meaning. "No, he is Li Ju's younger brother after all. He was beaten to death after the first meeting. It's not good." Shan Mingzi suddenly shrank his neck and felt a chill on his back. Why did he have a bad feeling? "Stop chatting and come over for dinner." At this time, Shan's mother had prepared everything and greeted them with a smile to sit down. The three of them took their seats. Shan Mingzi sat opposite Chi Jinkai without seeing anything, and looked at him with a bright smile on his face. He looked like he had no good intentions. Li Ju frowned and stepped on Shan Mingzi under the table. "Why are you smiling like a fool?" "Sister, your subordinates, please show mercy, I'm about to be crushed by you," Shan Mingzi said in pain. Li Ju's words were concise and concise, "You deserve it." Shan Mingzi. "Sister, you have changed. You are no longer the sister who loves me the most. I didn't update yesterday because I suddenly had the desire to start the next book. This book is barely halfway through. Starting a book now is not the best choice, so I just sorted out my thoughts and plan to prepare an outline first. I'm not sure when it will be released. Alas, I actually thought about updating 2 books at once, but then I probably wouldn't be able to guarantee stable updates, so that's it. Let's take a look first." End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfe. Chapter 422. Chapter 415, You know Shan Mingzi is unreliable. Although Shan Mingzi is not Li Ju's biological brother by blood, it can be said that he is almost the same as someone he picked up halfway, but after getting along with him for so long, their relationship is even worse than that of a close relative. Now Li Ju is teaching him a lesson for an outsider. I couldn't help but feel sour bubbles popping up from the inside out. He glanced at Chi Jinkai vaguely, and that look was full of resentment, as if someone had taken away some treasure. Chi Jinkai. I don't know why, but the more I look at this kid, the more I dislike him. Since Shan's mother and Li Ju, who can be said to be the only two psychological shadows in Shan Mingzi's 20-plus years of life, are present, he has to endure no matter how much resentment and dissatisfaction he has. However, Shan Mingzi is not a tolerant person by nature. If he cannot vent his anger, he will have to suffocate himself to death sooner or later. So throughout the meal, he kept looking for excuses to pour wine into Chi Jinkai. By the end, he stopped looking for excuses and the two of them started blowing on the bottles. As a result, until Shan Mingzi drank all the stock in the house and lay motionless on the table with his head down, Chi Jinkai still sat there with an upright posture, not looking like a drunk person at all. But if you look closely, you can still see subtle differences. For example, the tips of his ears are stained with blood, his eyes are blurry, and there is a slightly dazed look in his eyes, which makes him a little duller than usual. When she stretched out her hand and waved it in front of him, she obviously still reacted, indicating that this person was just tipsy at best. Li Ju looked very surprised. It seemed like this was the first time she knew that Chi Jinkai had such a good drinking capacity. He drank even Shan Mingzi, who often hung out in bars, and he was still sober. This kid is really acting up. Shan's mother looked at the unconscious Shan Mingzi and held her forehead against her headache. There is hangover medicine upstairs, I'll go get it. After saying that, she stood up. Unexpectedly, Li Ju also stood up, Aunt Shan, let me go with you. She smiled and explained, ACI is a little drunk too. The hangover medicine is not as heavy as 1,000 pounds, so it doesn't need two people to take it. Li Ju's meaning clearly means that he wants to talk to her alone. He said, this is just a good reason, and I didn't even think about it. The single mother was silent for a moment, then smiled and said, okay. Arriving at the bedroom, Shan's mother rummaged through the drawers and finally found the hangover medicine she had bought at some point on the bottom floor. She turned the bottle over and looked at the production date, and said, fortunately it's not expired. After that, she gently put the medicine on the bedside table. She had no intention of going down. Instead, she turned to look at Li Ju, lowered her eyes and said, Juju, just ask whatever you want to ask. I'll pick the one I still remember. Just now downstairs, although Li Ju wanted to be alone with her, he did not reveal that he had questions to ask. Shan's mother's words made it clear that she had guessed Li Ju's purpose. For this reason, Li Ju raised his eyebrows and looked at her quite unexpectedly, Aunt Shan, do you know what I want to say? Shan Mu sighed, I can guess a few things, just a few. She lowered her head, not knowing what to think about. After a long time, she suddenly raised her eyes and looked at the blue sky outside the window. Her tone was leisurely, I have no idea what you are going to do, but Zioxi is not someone who can hide things, my son, he has changed so much recently. How could I not see it? At first, I was a little worried that he was possessed by something dirty. After all, it was so unlike him. But after thinking about it carefully, I realized that maybe he was possessed by something dirty. Whose influence, Juju? I didn't mean to test you. If Li Ju wants to harm the mother and son, there is no need to go to great lengths. She is not stupid enough to be suspicious of her. Li Ju chuckled, Aunt Shan, I know. She held her forehead and said with a headache, I knew Mingzi was unreliable. It was so easy to notice. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfe. Chapter 423. Chapter 416 The Truth of the Year. Xiao 11 might be afraid that I would worry, so he refused to tell me anything. I only found out about it when he mentioned it once when he was drunk. The single mother showed a smile that was not quite a smile, her expression was a bit bitter, actually, you don't have to be like this. It's good now. I don't want to break the calm, let alone get you involved. The grievances of the previous generation have nothing to do with you, and they have nothing to do with Jeju. You don't need to. Before Shan's mother finished speaking, she was suddenly interrupted by Li Ju. What about Shan Minja? As soon as the name was spoken, Shan Mu's pupils trembled violently, and her hands began to tremble involuntarily. A sour feeling came to her heart. She lowered her head and said nothing, her eyes gradually becoming moist. Li Ju continued, Shan Mingzi told me everything he knew. Aunt Shan, do you want Shan Minja to die in vain and Li Hong's family to continue to be at large? The single mother's voice trembled, no, it's not. She wished she could risk her life to let that Li Hong be buried with Xiao. But, no. It doesn't matter if it's just her, but there are Xiaoxi and Jeju, and she can't drag them into the water. Shan's mother raised her head, with tears still hanging from the corners of her eyes, and said in a worried tone, Jeju, no matter what you do, don't continue. Li Hong is sinister and vicious, and he can even attack his own daughter. I'm afraid you will suffer a loss. Li Ju sighed, stepped forward and comforted softly, Aunt Shan, don't worry, with Li Hong's ability, he is not qualified to have any impact on me. As for Shan Mingzi, I said I would protect him, this is not a joke. But, having said that, the single mother's inner worries have not diminished by half. What's more, you don't want Shan Mingzi to remain so unknown. I believe you can also see that since he came to the imperial capital, he has been paying close attention to the Li family. Li Ju added. When mentioning this, Shan Mu's eyes became sour again. Yes, she knows. Xiao 11's child has not had a father since he was a child. Although he is very sensible and says nothing, she understands that he is particularly longing for family affection in his heart. If all the Li family were like Li Hong, they would have nothing to say, and Xiao 11 would not have the slightest expectation. But this is not the case. Xiaoxi, he must. The single mother sighed, feeling even more ashamed of her child. It's all my fault, it's all my fault. When Li Ju saw her speaking, he couldn't help covering his face and crying. His eyes darkened slightly. He took out a tissue and wiped her with it. He said, Aunt Shan, I don't blame you. You are not wrong. It is Li Hong who is wrong. I will definitely help you seek justice. The single mother sobbed softly, no, if I hadn't been obsessed with Li Hong for a moment, nothing would have happened later. Xiaoxi and his sister might have been reincarnated into a better family, and they wouldn't have to eat so much with me. It's painful. Li Ju clicked his tongue, who didn't meet a few scumbags when they were young? Besides, Shan Mingzi is lucky to be reincarnated as your child, so don't belittle yourself. Originally it was very sad to bring up old things, but after hearing these words, the single mother finally couldn't help but burst into tears and smiled, you kid. She raised her hand to wipe her tears and asked, what do you want to know? Just ask. Li Ju paused for a moment, fearing that her emotions would become unstable again if she asked. As if seeing her worry, Shan's mother chuckled and said, don't worry, I'm not that fragile. I was a little emotional just now, but I have calmed down now and won't be like that again. What happened back then was indeed a thorn in her heart. Over such a long time, it has long since developed into a chronic disease. As long as she touches it, she will feel heart-piercing pain. But she can't care about so much now. She can't completely ignore Shan Mingzi because she is stuck in the pain of the past and can't extricate herself. Shan Mingzi was really different during this period from before. His whole person seemed to be full of vitality, and he no longer relied on the mischievous and scornful air all over his body to cover up the depression in his heart. She was really happy for him. So no matter how long the thorn was, she had to reluctantly pull it out. Thinking of this, Shan Mu's eyebrows relaxed a lot. Seeing that she seemed to have really thought about it, Li Ju didn't have so many worries and asked directly, "What was the truth about you and Li Hong back then and Shan Minja's death? I want to know the specific details." The single mother's face paled for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "It's a long story." She turned to look out the window, her expression seemed to be lost in memories. "Back then, I was the first college student in the village to go out. I had never seen the prosperity of the metropolis, and I quickly became confused. Then something happened. I followed Li Hong by mistake, and after a while, I found out that I was pregnant. Li Hong couldn't have wanted this child. After he found out, he gave me a sum of money to abort the baby. I couldn't bear it, so I went back to my hometown and gave birth to Xiaoxi and Xiao." When mentioning this paragraph, Shan Mu had a slight smile on her face. "Although the people in the village criticized me because I got pregnant before we were married, the three of us, mother and son, lived pretty well, but it wasn't until Minja was admitted to the imperial capital that everything changed." The single mother's voice trembled slightly. This memory was the last thing she wanted to think of, but she still held back her sobs and continued, "Perhaps it was God's fault that Minja met Li Yun by chance. Later, somehow, Li Yun knew that Xiao because of Ya's life experience. He disliked her in every way, made trouble for her everywhere in school, and even teamed up with other students to bully her. In the end, Xiao couldn't hold on anymore and went to find Li Hong. She thought that he would help her because of the blood relationship between father and daughter, even if Li Yun didn't target her again, but Li Hong, this bastard, felt in her heart he only had his own reputation and status, and felt that Xiao's existence was a stain on her. Not only did he not recognize her, he also ordered people to threaten her in private, trying to drive her out of the imperial capital. After Li Yun knew Li Hong's attitude, he became even more unscrupulous and bullied Xiao even harder. Finally. Shan's mother suddenly paused, her voice choked with sobs, and she couldn't say the next words. Li Yun called Xiao over at a party, and combined with the group of children from aristocratic families to stun Xiao, and then, Xiao was beaten by those beasts. It's a pity that we knew it too late. By the time Xiaoxi and I arrived at the imperial capital, Xiao had already committed suicide by jumping off the building. My Xiao, Shan's mother covered her heart and said with a painful expression. Hearing this, Li Ju's eyes turned cold. Unexpectedly, it turned out that Li Yun was involved here. Aunt Shan, didn't you call the police? She asked, squinting her eyes. I reported it, but... Shan Mu gritted her teeth. Li Hong, that beast, was afraid that it would increase the scandal for him, so he suppressed the matter directly. We orphans and widowers can't fight him in the imperial capital. He didn't even have time to see Xiao for the last time, and he was kicked out of the imperial capital. Li Ju's eyes were as if they were tempered by ice, and the aura around him was cold and terrifying. Li Hong. Li Yun. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfe. Chapter 424. Chapter 417. Boss, are you kidding me? It's all my fault. Shan's mother kept blaming herself and regretting. Li Ju patted her shoulder gently and assured her, Aunt Shan, I will seek justice for Shan Minja. She comforted the single mother for a while, and after her mood stabilized, the two of them went downstairs. Qi Jinkai still maintained the same posture as before, sitting there quietly. Seeing Li Ju come down, he raised his slightly dazed eyes to look at her, frowned and asked, why did it take so long? Li Ju handed him 2 sobering pills and said, look for the medicine. Qi Jinkai took it and spread it in the palm of his hand. A flash of disgust flashed in his eyes. I won't eat it. Li Ju handed him the water glass again and said helplessly, it will make you feel uncomfortable if you don't eat. I'm not drunk. Drunks all say they are not drunk. Seeing that he was lingering and refusing to eat, Li Ju frowned and said in a deep tone, "Hurry up." Perhaps seeing Li Ju's face darken, Qi Jinkai curled his lips and swallowed the hangover medicine reluctantly. After giving Shan Mingzi the hangover medicine, Shan's mother helped him up and said to Li Ju, "Juju, I'll take Xiao 11 back to the room first, and I'll leave a CI to you. Aunt Shan, can I help you?" Li Ju was worried that it would be difficult for her to support Shan Mingzi, who weighed more than 100 pounds, by herself. She was about to step forward to help, but found that Qi Jinkai grabbed the corner of her clothes. She lowered her head and met his eyes. She could clearly see that it was full of displeased. "You're not allowed to go," Qi Jinkai lowered his voice and his tone was unreasonable. Although his reaction is a little delayed now, he is not drunk enough to lose consciousness. Li Ju wants to help Dan Mingzi, but he is not allowed. "It's okay, I can do it alone, Juju, you should take care of ACI." Shan's mother waved her hand to Li Ju and helped Shan Mingzi, who was sleeping deeply, upstairs alone. "Li Ju. Is this person's jealousy too unreasonable?" Li Ju glared at him helplessly and sighed, saying there was nothing she could do to him. "Let's go, Big Vinegar, I'll take you back to your room." Hearing this, De Guang's original displeasure disappeared instantly, and he followed Li Ju happily. Arriving at the room, Li Ju asked Qi Jinkai to sleep for a while and then wanted to turn around and leave, but he unexpectedly held his hand. "Come sleep with me for a while." Perhaps because he was drunk, Qi Jinkai's voice was particularly low and hoarse, with a sultry appeal. Li Ju's ears tingled when he heard this, and he sighed and could only lie down with him. After he fell asleep, Li Ju made sure that there was no problem and quietly got out of bed and left the room. The next moment, I happened to meet Shan Mu and saw that she had put on her coat. She couldn't help but asked in surprise, "Juju, are you going out?" "Well, something happened," Li Ju said. At the number 1 affiliated middle school, He Yao went straight to the school gate after class, and unexpectedly saw Li Ju leaning under a tree, leisurely counting the numbers on the traffic lights. He Yao twitched the corner of her mouth, ran over, and complained in a very resentful tone, "Boss, can't you wait until I'm out of school to find me next time? Do you know how tiring it is to have to make excuses every time you go out?" Li Ju glanced sideways at her. "It's not my decision to do this. I'll come find her when I need her, why wait?" He Yao, so what happened again? "Help me check the surveillance of all bars in Imperial Capital from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. on December 6, 4 years ago." He Yao. He Yao. He Yao. WTF? Excuse me. Boss, are you kidding me? He Yao's current expression was as if someone had poured a bucket of ice water on her head and then been struck by lightning. The surveillance 4 years ago was so wide-ranging. Do you think it was a radar that could detect everything? End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfe. Chapter 425. Chapter 418. Treat her as a tool. I don't know if the surveillance from 4 years ago is still there, and there are hundreds if not thousands of bars in the entire imperial capital. Boss, you are making things difficult for me. The corners of He Yao's eyes kept twitching, and her expression was a little stiff. Li Ju tsked lightly and glanced at her lightly. "It's not difficult. Why should I find you? So you gave me a Thanos level of difficulty." He Yao looked sad and felt that Li Ju was a god. Li Ju was silent for a moment and told her what Shan's mother had just said. After hearing this, He Yao was filled with disbelief. Is Li Yun so bold? How old was she at that time? Still a student, even doing this kind of beast is not as good enough. Li Hong was so stressed out about things back then that he couldn't find many things, so I came to find you. It is estimated that no one except He Yao can find out those information. He Yao nodded, understanding why Li Ju had to find her. But, boss, haven't you asked Sister Yig to investigate, He Yao asked. Although she did not go to pick up Feng Yan, she had already learned the news that Lu Yig and others had come to the empire. Did she tell you? Li Ju asked. No, she posted it on WeChat Moments. He Yao took out her mobile phone and pulled out Lu Yig's latest news. What the kind of road is this? 2 pairs of my high heels are broken. The accompanying picture shows a muddy village road. The tone was full of disgust and complaints. Everyone knew that Miss Liu's princess disease had returned. Now everyone knows what you asked her to do, boss. Li Ju's eyes twitched slightly. I asked her to do things, but there was no progress yet. Instead, it was so high profile that I wanted the whole world to know that she really was there. It's not enough to investigate alone with a song, Li Ju said. Isn't this enough? He Yao was immediately startled. If Sister Yi Ji can really find evidence, then Li Hong will be in bad luck. As for the immoral things he has done, once he is found guilty, the jail sentence will be light. Li Ju's lips curved with a hint of ridicule. What I want is not just Li Hong paying the price. He Yao raised her eyebrows slightly and clicked her tongue twice. What she meant was that she wanted Li Yun to accompany her father. You are truly worthy of being the boss. However, she was not familiar with Li Hong and his daughter. They were none of her business, but if Li Ju wanted to kill them, she would still be willing to contribute. Okay, I'll try my best, give me a week. He Yao curled her lips and accepted the job. Li Ju nodded. Hurry up. I see. After explaining this to He Yao, Li Ju left without staying any longer. He Yao stood there and watched her leaving back, sighing helplessly. Chi Saijin asked her to investigate a dark bar before. She had just finished it, and in the blink of an eye, Li Ju came to her again. Everyone regards her as a tool. Excessive. He Yao angrily stamped her feet on the spot to vent her resentment. Now the time she spends with her brother and Yan has been greatly reduced. She goes to class every day with dark circles under her eyes and can't concentrate at all. Chi Anyun called her name several times, which almost made him wonder if she was doing something sneaky at night. Honestly, she couldn't concentrate in class, and it was definitely because of these deceitful guys. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfe. Chapter 426. Chapter 419, After the Truth is Revealed. The school security guard watched He Yao hurried out and came back with a slumped head. He couldn't help but feel happy. Classmate, are you being scolded? He Yao shook her head. Who were you just now? The security guard asked. He thought that Li Ju was not very old, at most she was her sister or something like that. He Yao snorted and said angrily, she is my ancestor. Security guard. Over there, Li Ju took out her mobile phone and contacted a certain young lady in City D. At this time, Lu Yig was holding a thermos cup in both hands, wrapped in a heavy cotton jacket, sitting on a pony, and asking for information from a circle of uncles and aunties sitting around him, with an expression on his face that was almost unbearable. Living. If anyone who knew her now saw her like this, they would definitely be so happy that they couldn't stand up straight. Discuss what it would be like for the eldest lady who is usually aloof and condescending to suddenly turn into Muraguchi Xiaofang. It happened to be a task assigned by Li Ju. He couldn't do it perfunctorily and had to do it himself. Just when she really couldn't bear it anymore, a sudden phone call saved her life. She gestured to the people around her to lower the volume, put her phone to her ear, and said, "Hello." Li Ju listened to the constant noise coming from her mobile phone and carefully identified it as the sound of wind. She frowned slightly and asked, "How is the progress?" Lu Yig rolled his eyes and said angrily, "It's very bad, boss. You didn't tell me before that this matter is so difficult to investigate." When she arrived, she discovered that there was no detailed written or data record of what happened more than 10 years ago, so she had to go door to door to inquire. For this reason, she threw away several pairs of G's high-heeled shoes. She was so high-spirited when she came here, but now she is like a crazy woman. Li Ju curled his lips, put one hand in his pocket, and asked naturally, otherwise, why do you think I would spend 8 figures for you to investigate? If it was really that easy, wouldn't she have to do it herself? Lu Yig. She knew it. Everyone in MZ knows how stingy the big boss Li Ju is. It is absolutely impossible to take advantage of her. Sure enough, she was still too stupid and naive. Boss, you are so stupid. Lu Yig's tone was very sad. My high heels are ruined. That's right, you have a reason to buy a new one. The hundreds of thousands I spent on maintaining my face were all in vain. Li Ju raised his eyebrows and said, it sounds like your hundreds of thousands are of use. Lu Yig was completely silent. Okay, Miss Lu, don't complain in a hurry. Leave what you are doing and help me find something first, Li Ju said. Lu Yig, what? Li Ju listed what she needed one by one and sent it to Lu Yig. After reading it, Lu Yig's eyes suddenly darkened. When should I find these? This broken city is so backward. She has to look for the information Li Ju needs bit by bit, like flipping through a book. It will probably take years and months to find it. Boss, please spare me, my ability is very limited, I don't want the tens of millions anymore, can you find someone else? Lu Yig almost knelt down in front of Li Ju. She wished she could cry to her. This is no longer cheating, this is obviously bullying. Isn't it okay if she doesn't want the money? But the fact is, no. Li Ju, it's too late, no way. Lu Yig. You can think about it from another angle. We have already arrived in City D. If nothing is found, wouldn't it be a wasted trip? Li Ju comforted. Lu Yig looked at the adults and ants sitting around her, and her heart suddenly shed 2 pieces of lasagna. Before she had even finished asking about this matter, Li Ju added fuel to her fire. If she kept going a little longer, she felt like she was going to explode. However, at the end, she opened her mouth and could only ask in a depressed voice, Boss, when do you want it? There was no other way, the boss's oppression was too strong, she couldn't resist and could only compromise. Hurry up, perhaps because he couldn't convey his meaning well, Li Ju added, try to give it to me in these 2 days. I know. Lu Yig hung up the phone feebly. Looking at the black screen, Li Ju suddenly fell into deep thought. In fact, she didn't have to worry about this, she just had to follow the original plan. But after listening to Shan Mu's words, she felt that it would be a waste of the Earth's resources for scumbags like Li Hong and Li Yun to breathe another day's air. 4 years ago, she was seriously injured during a mission and was rescued by a mother and her son. In fact, at first, she just wanted to use some money to help them save her life. But later, after hearing about what happened between Shan Mu and Li Hong, she changed her mind. For some reason, she needs an identity that can sneak into the upper-class circles of the imperial capital without anyone noticing. The illegitimate daughter of the Li family is simply perfect. For this reason alone, she must not miss this opportunity. So, she assumed the identity of Shan Mingzi's dead sister Shan Minjia, forged a paternity certificate and entered the Li family. Then she brought Shan's mother and Shan Mingzi to the imperial capital together, and has been slowly planning until now. She promised Shan's mother to avenge Shan Minjia and help them get back everything that belonged to them. And she occupied Shan Minjia's identity for 2 full years. In the past 2 years, using her identity as the illegitimate daughter of the Li family as a cover, she found a lot of useful things. Now, she has almost investigated the things she wanted to investigate, and it is time to return her identity. It's just. Li Ju was sitting alone in the last row of the bus, with an earphone plugged into his right ear, supporting his chin with one hand, looking at the receding scenery outside the window, and suddenly lowered his eyes, with unnatural emotions flashing across his eyes. She was worried about something else now. Concerning her identity, what would be Mr. Li's reaction if he knew all this? Having pretended to be his granddaughter for 2 years would probably make everyone angry. In the past 2 years, his love for her can be said to be known to everyone in the imperial capital, even outsiders. She is not stupid, so it is impossible not to feel it. This is also one of the reasons why she is most upset now. If Mr. Li had a bad attitude towards her or was cold to her, she would turn around and leave without any concern, but the fact was completely opposite, which actually made her feel a little bit reluctant to leave. She could imagine how shocked and hurt he would look. It seems that, I can't bear to tell Mr. Li the truth. Not only these, but also Qi Jinkai. After making the truth public, she will no longer stay in the imperial capital. If she wants to leave, will Qi Jinkai go with her? In that case, what will happen to the Qi family and what to do to Sr. Li Ju felt a little headache thinking about the series of situations that might happen after these. She sighed heavily, her mood extremely complicated. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfe. Chapter 428. Chapter 420. Have you thought about it? The bus arrived at the stop and the passengers filed out. Li Ju looked at his phone, turned around and turned into an alley, finding the hot pot restaurant where he and Ji Yunshu often went in their spare time. He entered the store and chose an inconspicuous corner to sit down. He lowered his head and sent a message to Ji Yunshu, "Come to the old place quickly." Within half an hour, Li Ju was eating mandarin duck pot alone when Ji Yunshu ran over panting. There were still beads of sweat on her forehead, and there were a few messy strands of hair stuck to both sides of her cheeks. It looked like she was running here. Li Ju raised her eyebrows and pushed the cup of tea at her side. Ji Yunshu ran in a hurry and his breath was a little unsteady. Before he could sit down, he picked up the teacup and drank it all. After the tea was down, she frowned as if she had just realized what was happening and asked, "What is your hobby of eating hot pot and drinking tea?" Li Ju said calmly, "Extinguish the fire." What's the best way to quell the fire? Hot pot and iced beer are the perfect match. Do not think so. Ji Yunshu sat opposite her. With his understanding of Li Ju for so many years, he was keenly aware that something was wrong with her mood. "What's wrong with you? You called me out suddenly. I thought something happened. As a result, I ran over and found that this man was making hot pot and drinking tea. He was leisurely and leisurely. He didn't look like something serious had happened at all." Li Ju didn't say anything. He handed her a pair of chopsticks and gave her the menu, "See what else you want to eat and order it yourself." Ji Yunshu glanced at the things on the table, twitched the corners of his mouth, and said, "Everything on the menu is here, what else should I order?" As soon as I entered the door, I noticed that the entire hot pot restaurant was particularly noticeable at the table. Eating a hot pot was like a full seat in Manhattan. The relationship was here to show off the wealth. "Boss, what's going on?" Ji Yunshu asked. Li Ju lowered his eyes and poked the tripe on the plate with his chopsticks. After a long time, as if he finally made up his mind, he sighed and said, "Help me prepare a paternity test for Li Hong." Ji Yunshu was rinsing green vegetables. Hearing this, he raised his eyes and looked at her, "Don't you have some?" 2 years ago, it was because of the paternity test she forged for Li Ju and Li Hong that she was admitted back to the Li family by Mr. Li. "I want to be serious this time." Li Ju put down his chopsticks and took a sip of tea. Ji Yunshu. Ji Yunshu put down his chopsticks and finally realized the purpose of calling him here. He crossed his arms and looked at her expressionlessly, "Are you going to cause trouble?" Although the tone was questioning, Ji Yunshu's eyes were almost certain. In the real paternity test, Li Ju and Li Hong have nothing to do with each other, and judging from her obviously wrong reaction after calling her out today, she must be causing something big. Perhaps it's still the kind of thing that will shake things up. Li Ju did not deny this, but glanced at her and asked calmly, "What do you think?" Ji Yunchu's eyelids twitched, he took a breath, and said helplessly, "I guess that there must be something wrong with you calling Yig and Baya over for no reason. So, MZ's recent actions were also ordered by you." Although she usually concentrates on pharmaceuticals and poisoning, and has recently been troubled by Li Tingzi, she is not very concerned about what is happening in the outside world. However, despite this, she is still one of the shareholders of MZ, and she is not concerned about the troubles caused by her company. I also know a little bit about the movement. At that time, she felt something was wrong. Later, when she heard that Lu Yig and the others came to the empire quietly, her premonition became more certain. It was not until Li Ju called her out without warning that everything finally came together. Li Ju nodded silently. Looking at her like this, Ji Yunchu suddenly remembered this person's glorious history of causing trouble in the past. He suddenly felt a pain in his teeth and hissed, "Boss, do you really want to turn the imperial capital upside down?" Li Ju's eyes flickered, there was a sound. I knew that this day would come sooner or later. Ji Yunchu closed his eyes, put his hand on his forehead, and sighed. She accompanied Li Ju to the imperial capital 2 years ago. She knew exactly what Li Ju wanted to do, and she had known that this day would come since then. But what was different from that time was that her state of mind had undergone some changes. Ji Yunchu raised his eyes and looked at Li Ju. He hesitated for a long time and asked cautiously, "You know the consequences of doing this, right?" Then you are not reluctant at all. Mr. Li has been very kind to you these years." Just telling the truth and then walking away felt a little hurtful to a person who is naturally cold-hearted. Li Ju finally raised his head, looking at her calmly and without any fluctuations, and said in a cold tone, "I am not from the Li family to begin with. If you continue to shamelessly occupy this identity, it will be the greatest harm to Mr. Li." "What about the third master?" Ji Yunchu asked what he wanted to ask the most. "If you really leave, I'm sure that the third master will overthrow the imperial capital. What are you going to do then?" Before Li Ju could react, she added, "Don't tell me that you and Mr. San are just playing around. Even a blind person can see that you like him." When Qi Jinkai was mentioned, Li Ju's expression finally changed slightly. A flash of emotion flashed across his eyes dodged for a moment, and he said, "I don't know. She hasn't told Qi Jinkai everything yet and doesn't know what to do." Ji Yunchu was slightly shocked. In her impression, Li Ju would remain absolutely calm and rational no matter where he was at any time, keeping all uncertain factors firmly under control, and there would be no time when he was at a loss. Now, she can actually say the 4 words "I don't know," which shows how much Qi Jinkai has influenced her. Ji Yunchu was stunned for a moment, then chuckled and shook his head, "Forget it, why does she care about this? She is not Li Ju or Qi Jinkai, so why should she be so careless? I will give you the paternity test you want tomorrow." Then, she stood up and was about to leave. As soon as she took a step, she stopped and turned around and said to Li Ju, "I think you should have a good talk with Third Master. After all, there are too many uncertainties between the two of you." Lao Chi Li Ju suddenly called her. Ji Yunchu didn't know why. How are you and my eldest brother now?" Ji Yunchu didn't expect that she would suddenly ask such a question, so he stayed where he was. After coming back to his senses, he felt his face was slightly hot and his eyes were wandering. "Why are you asking this?" Li Ju paused, "It's nothing, just cherish it." Ji Yunchu's cheeks became even hotter and he turned around and left without saying a word. Li Ju was left alone looking at the dishes on the table without any interest. She was silent for a while, picked up her chopsticks and took 2 bites. After 2 bites, she couldn't eat any more, so she stood up to pay and left. What a weirdo, I ordered a large table of dishes and ended up eating just a few bites. Are you here to show off your wealth? The waiter who was cleaning up made some remarks in a low voice. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Faye. Chapter 429. Chapter 421. As expected of you. On the way back, Li Ju was obviously a little absent-minded. He didn't realize he was back until he was standing at the door. Qi Jinkai had already woken up, and found that Li Ju was not there. He frowned for a moment. He was about to call and ask, but when he looked up, he saw that she was back. Where have you gone? Li Ju lowered his head and changed his shoes. He said without saying a word, I went to meet someone. Qi Jinkai stepped forward, lowered his head and sniffed, raised his eyebrows and asked, and then you ate hot pot? Male or female? Li Ju was helpless. Will this person always only focus on this? But he looked like I'll keep staring at you if you don't say anything, so Li Ju had no choice but to say, female. Satisfied, Qi Jinkai leaned over and hugged her gently, resting his chin on the top of her head, and said, I woke up just now and found you weren't there. I thought you had run away. Li Ju lowered his eyes and asked inexplicably, why should I run? Are you tired of me following you shamelessly? Qi Jinkai said with a smile, completely unaware of Li Ju's expression at this time. No, Li Ju muttered in a low voice. Qi Jinkai didn't hear clearly, huh? Li Ju raised her eyes to look at him and said seriously, I won't find it annoying to you. Originally it was just a joke, so Qi Jinkai didn't take it seriously, but when he saw Li Ju being so serious, he finally noticed something was wrong with her, frowned and asked, Juju, what's wrong? Li Ju shook his head slightly, it's okay. Qi Jinkai's expression suddenly became serious. He put his hands on her shoulders and asked her to look directly at him, don't fool me. What's wrong? Based on his understanding of Li Ju, if nothing had happened, she would not have said such a thing for no reason. Li Ju now is different from her usual self. It seems that her whole body is covered by a layer of gray fog, making it difficult to see through. Just like when she woke up after suddenly fainting in Continent S. It gave him a feeling of panic. I'm really fine. Li Jibo pulled his hand away and said helplessly, I'm just a little tired and want to sleep for a while. Okay, then I'll sleep with you for a while. After returning to the bedroom, Qi Jinkai heard Li Ju suddenly ask, what will you do if one day I am no longer Li Ju? This sentence, at first glance, sounded particularly puzzling, but Qi Jinkai paused slightly and realized that there seemed to be a deeper meaning in her words. Something is wrong. Qi Jinkai frowned. Something has been wrong since she came back just now, and she refused to tell herself. What's wrong with her? Even though he had 1,000 questions in his heart, Qi Jing didn't show it on his face. He raised his hand and rubbed her head comfortingly, and said with a chuckle, no matter what you say, no matter who you are my girlfriend. Li Ju lowered his eyes and did not react to his words. He continued, then what if one day, I leave the imperial capital? As soon as he finished speaking, the smile on Qi Jinkai's lips suddenly disappeared, and his tone was deep, what did you say? Li Ju raised her eyes to look at him, and was stunned for a moment. She had never seen such a serious Qi Jinkai. When she saw clearly that there was ice raging in his eyes, she lowered her eyes and changed an explanation, what I mean is, what if you get tired of staying in the imperial capital and don't want to stay here anymore? That's what it means originally. Qi Jinkai immediately breathed a sigh of relief. He was overthinking it. Her tone just now made him think that she was breaking up with him and leaving the imperial capital to fly away. He hugged Li Ju into his arms, rested his chin on her head, and whispered affectionately, I will go wherever you go. If you don't want to stay in the imperial capital, then we will move abroad. It just so happens that I still have friends abroad. Several estates. Li Ju raised her head in his arms. Are you really willing to go with me? Qi Jinkai nodded without hesitation. What about Grandpa Qi and Sr? The old man probably won't object. I just need to come back and visit occasionally. Sr doesn't need me much now, so it doesn't matter. He looked at Li Ju tenderly and said softly, as long as I can stay with you, it doesn't matter what I lose. Li Ju was silent for a moment. After a long time, she slowly raised the corners of her lips, looked at Qi Jinkai, and said word by word, this is what you said, you will accompany me wherever I go. In this case, if she leaves the imperial capital in the future, she will have to pack him away with her. What she said just now was actually to test Qi Jinkai's thoughts. After all, unlike her, she could leave calmly after telling the truth. Daijing is Qi Jinkai's home. If she insists on letting him leave here with her, she will not be able to bear it. What's more, she can't explain the Qi family's side. She is relieved now. As long as Qi Jinkai is willing to leave with her, she doesn't care about the marriage between the Li family and the Qi family, just go to him. Qi Jinkai didn't know that in just a short moment, Li Ju's mind had already turned 18 corners, and finally made the decision to pack him away. He lowered his eyes and looked at Li Ju, his eyes filled with gentleness. Smile, okay. After receiving Qi Jinkai's assurance, Li Ju felt happy. The worries in his heart were all gone, and he became more relaxed about what he was going to do next. The next day, Ji Yunchu handed a real paternity test report to Li Ju. During this period, he also specially observed her condition, raised his eyebrows, and asked with a smile, have you figured it out? Different from yesterday, Li Ju's eyes were now slightly raised, and the corners of his mouth were smiling from time to time, and he was in a particularly happy mood. After listening to Ji Yunchu's words, she said, I've figured it out. Don't worry about anything else. Qi Jinkai is my boyfriend now. If I leave, I will definitely take him with me. Ji Yunchu opened his eyes wide in surprise, and once suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. Did she hear it correctly? Did Li Ju just say that he wanted to take Qi Jinkai away with him? What a joke. Who is Qi Jinkai? Does that mean he can be taken away if he can? Boss, are you serious? You. Ji Yunchu burst into tears at Li Ju's behavior, which was similar to that of a robber robbing people. Can others agree to what you do? Li Ju, I have plenty of ways to make them agree. Ji Yunchu suddenly felt a bad premonition in his heart. Your method won't include but is not limited to the use of force, right? Li Ju was silent for a few seconds and did not speak. The atmosphere froze in a second. Ji Yunchu knew that she had simply acquiesced, and immediately had the urge to pass out. What is all this about? For a few years in Emperor Jing, he was still grabbing a man to go back to the village, and this man is still a flower of Kaolin that no one can mess with. Thinking about other people's reactions when they find out about this. The picture is so beautiful that I dare not even think about it. Boss, it's really you. End of this chapter.